Welcome back, everybody, to, Wheel of Tiny Things, by which I mean The Great Hunt. And we're continuing today. And we're going to do chapters 22, Watchers, I think, all the way to chapter 37, I think, which is called maybe 36, 37. I'll find out when I upload this. It's called What May Have Been, something like that. What may be, whatever. Something like that. It's all about alternative shit going down. So that's sort of what we're going to do today. We'll see where this will lead us. And then we're going to wrap the whole thing up tomorrow because I got a lot of time to read today. Which is good because, reading. It's about the only thing I have right now. Anyway, let's get this started. Cheers. So, yesterday I said that we're going to go to girly magic school or magic girl school today. And we're going to do a bit of that, but not that much actually. And then we're going to do more rant stuff, which is terrible. Like, probably a lot of it's terrible. And we're going to look at new cultures and crazy shit with the Sean-chan or something like that. So yeah, let's look at it. We gotta look at Moraine and Lan, who have done Moraine Lan things, or doing Moraine Lan things, which is research. So we get a bit of like background information, and then we get an attack. And then we go to Nynaeve and Egwene, who reach Tarvalon, and Nynaeve has to do a test to be administered, allowed into the ranks of the accepted, which is not yet, honored mothers of the Bene Gesserit, but at least she has done the Water of Life thing, I guess, or something similar. We're going to talk about that, and then we'll go and look at the Game of Thrones or whatever, and other stuff. So yeah. First of all, we get a bit more of the information, or we get a bit of an info dump thing with a bit of threat shit going down with the chapter Watchers, where we have mostly Moraine talking to two older Aes Sedai who have retired with one elderly warder and are doing the cloistered academic thing, which, more power to them. I fully approve. That's a really cool way to spend your time. So, yeah. And Moraine asks the usual questions and gets some answers on stuff like the Dragon Reborn and all those prophecies and so forth. So we get a bit of background history and whatnot. And this is cleverly done. I mean, not cleverly done. We've seen this handled by all kinds of authors before. It's one of the oldest tricks in the book. If you have multiple viewpoint characters, you let one character find something out that is desperately needed by one of the other characters. They can't communicate, but you as the reader, you know now, so you have that tension build up. So that's sort of the trick that Jordan is pulling here, but he's doing it, competently, and at this point, I'm glad when I find something where I'm not going to get mad at Robert Jordan. So, good on you, Bobby J. That's really good. And it all kind of ends when Moraine is wandering around outside, and that Drakkar comes up, and Lan and what's his name, Jaime, something like that, Lannister, I guess, are killing the Drakkar, and then Moraine and Lan have to go. Before that, however, we get a bit more of the information on Lan's and Moraine's backstory, which is all about, Moraine being very, very calculating and whatnot, and telling Lan and trying to test Lan how far Lan will go, telling him that she has passed on her bond, or will pass on her bond to another colleague of hers, who will then pass it on again. So Lan, because he's bonded as a warder, and we have no idea what bonding actually means because we don't get that form of information. We just know that he's basically sworn, but magic sworn, so he can't actually do anything, and she can probably compel him, so he's her magic slave. Well, apparently some guys go for that, so, well, if it makes them happy, I guess. I mean, that part is, it might feel me feel kind of uncomfortable the way it is done, because it kind of makes Moraine come across as even more calculating and whatnot. And the problem there is that, as far as we know so far, Moraine is very much doing the right thing, right? She's very much on the side of the good and doing all the things that need doing, which, to oppose the Dark One. The problem there is obviously the whole like end justifying means kind of theory that you have. It's a very Jesuit way of dealing with things, and it's not really questioned. I mean, I guess the only argument that you can make so far, like when you want to debate the idea of like, is it okay to go and make sacrifices on others' behalf, like make sacrifices for a greater good. Is that okay? The answer is, well, she's a shitty person. And yeah, that's true, but maybe we've reached the point where our debates in moral philosophy have gone beyond, well, I don't like her, she comes across as arrogant. But we don't get that here. Anyway, that's sort of the thing here. It still also builds on that whole, like, does Lan love Nynaeve? Also, why does that happen so quickly? They talk like 3 sentences and they're in love, like deeply in love. Because remember, Lan gave Nynaeve that ring, so he has already kinda subverted that bond that Moraine has on him. We'll see how all of that goes, but I mean, yeah, whatever. Robert Jordan does not understand how relationships work, I guess. On the other hand, he was married to his editor for decades, I guess. So there's that. Makes me wonder how he got away with all of that, but then again, maybe not. All right, but that's sort of like the one thing. And then we get an interesting chapter, and I feel this is an important thing, and this is sort of the reason why I've actually gone further with this today than I planned originally, because it's about possibilities. We have the testing, which is a chapter where Nynaeve has to do her, like, Aes Sedai exam, and that is done through a Tangreal, not a Sangreal, and not an Angreal. So there's all kinds of Greals out there, but whatever. And the Tangreal is basically this machine that gives her, like, the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future, or in this case, I guess, the ghost of Nynaeve past, present, or future, where she has to face her greatest fears or regrets or whatever. Something that really fucks her up bad. One connected to her past, one connected to her future, and one connected to the present. And I do like this one. I mean, this is generally a cool idea. Well, it's not too, how to say, it's not, it's not rocket magic, is what I'm trying to say here, but it's competently done. I do think that the Ghost of Christmas Past, or like her past fears, the labyrinth with Agenor, that one sucks for a bunch of reasons. The biggest one is, obviously, the threat here is sexual violence. Now, Robert Jordan, with his prudish ways that we spoke about, is extremely unsuited to actually using sexual violence as a threat, because he can't actually pull it off. That's the one thing that apart from, like, is it a good idea to have that as bluntly out there as, like, yeah, that's her biggest fear, she needs to face that. No, come on, that's not exactly a smart thing to do. It's something that is extremely can be triggering, can be very harmful towards people that have actually trauma in that regard. Because you just gotta face it and then you're fine. That's a very toxic kind of way of talking about that. But then again, this is still the early 90s and people were doing things differently back then. So I'm cutting him some slack there. My point, however, is that yes, she met Agenor at the end of Eye of the World, but that whole scene there was just such a small kind of bit, and like, is that really Nynaeve's biggest trauma of all her, like, past? Is that one small, like, half a page, 2-sentence kind of fight with Agenor at the end of the Eye of the World? Really? See, it doesn't fully track, is what I'm saying here. But then again, she gets to blow around with magic, which she's not supposed to be able to do in that like weird wish machine. So maybe she's special, but we've already found out that she is kind of very, very powerful, but it was always connected to emotions, mostly anger and rage with her. And that's an interesting thing because we still need to figure out how Aes Sedai magic and touching, is it Saidin or Saidar? I always mix those two. Anyway, that side of the magic, is that connected to emotions or is it connected to rationale? Because, someone like Moiraine comes across as a very, very rational, not very emotional kind of person, and she's very powerful as an Aes Sedai. Is there any form of connection there? Because it feels weird that Nynaeve is so super powerful whenever she's just emotional, or is it just like a lack of control and she'll have to lose that over time if she really wants to become a powerful Aes Sedai? We don't know yet, but apparently she can do something that she's not supposed to do. And then we have, the Ghost of Christmas Present, which is Emond's Field, run by a very terrible new wisdom, and everyone kind of dying and everything going all to fucking hell. And that one I think is really good because it kind of adds something that was a bit missing over the last couple of books, because Nynaeve's actual job is to be wisdom of all of Emond's Field, not just one bit, that bit being like 4 kids. So her running off and doing all the stuff she does in Eye of the World and in now halfway through the Great Hunt, feels sort of out of character, because she comes across, to me at least, she came across as a very, very dutiful person, someone who takes their responsibilities very, very seriously. It's like, why is she, going to Burlon, grabbing those kids and dragging them back, that's fully in character, but then going along and keeping on going. Apart from like the whole, they're all meant to be together because of whatever kind of bullshit thing with Min and the Taviran kind of thing. Apart from that, there's no explanation within her character to do that. Yeah, you can probably argue that it's all because of the Murderol and the Trolloc threat, that she doesn't have a lot of choices, because they flee in the middle of the night and whatnot. But she could have just left and gone home and left those 4 kids, cut her losses, do the utilitarian thing, pull a Peter Singer or whatever, and just fuck it, I have an entire village of people that is probably going all to hell if I leave. And we don't see much of that. But here it's kind of brought back, at least. I'm like, yeah, that is really bothering her. That's her greatest fear, that she made the wrong choice. And going with Rand, Egwene, Matt and Perrin was actually the wrong choice, and her actual job would have been to stay in Emond's Field. So that one, yeah, kind of worked. I like that. The third one was a bit cheesy because, as I said, I find the whole Nynaeve is hopelessly in love with Lan kind of thing. Look, she can fall in love with whomever she fucking wants, and I'm fine with that. I'm not jealous of Lan. No, my point is that it comes sort of out of nowhere, and then I'm like, yeah, well, maybe I have no experience with falling in love or whatever. Anyway, point is, it felt a bit too cheesy. Oh, they're married, they have kids, everything is wonderful. But once again, she does something that I appreciate, and that is her, actually forcing the Tangreal to her will, right? Because the gate kind of vanishes, and then she just actually, through her willpower, forcing herself to hurt and make herself angry, to use her power to reconstitute that arc. That's pretty fucking cool. So yeah, yay for Nynaeve, and she's out of there, and she's now an official accepted of the Aes Sedai. So, well, journeywoman Aes Sedai, I suppose. Which kind of makes sense because they're all going on a journey relatively soon. Not yet, though. We're going to look at that in a bit. The other important thing, however, with Girly Magic School or Magic Girl School is obviously that Egwene meets Elaine, and they both meet Min, and all the three girls are now there, and all of them have the hots on for Rand, somewhat. Plus also Galahad the Pure, who's only Galad. Sounds a bit like French buckwheat pancakes, but who am I to judge? The Pure. And once again, Sir Galad the Pure, and it's not Sir Galahad the Pure here, but you know what I mean. That guy, he has, that person has a fuckload of potential. And I just hope that we'll see some of that later on, because yes, someone who is always doing the right thing with no regard for like any of the consequences. That's an interesting moral dilemma that kind of character brings you, because like he's doing the right thing, and you can start like weighing options like the damage towards the objectively right choice and whatnot. There's a lot of potential there. We don't see that yet. I hope we will see it at some point, and it will not just be a bit of like who falls in love with which good-looking guy and with which one not. You know, that, I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, I guess we'll find out soon. Anyway, you have like the girl friendship, and the girls are going on an adventure later on all together, so that's cool. Apart from that, well, it's magic school. They're treated like crap because, you know, you have to be treated like crap before you can actually learn anything, and then you can rise so you can then go and treat the ones underneath you like crap. It's like how armies, fraternities, and all these other hierarchical structures function, and it sucks. But that's not Robert Jordan's fault. It's how that shit works, and if he wants to have that kind of organization there, he has to put that bit in. He can't have like anarcho-witches there, which would be cool, though. Anti-authoritarian anarcho-witches. Someone please come up with a book like that. That would be really glorious. Anyway, we don't get that here. We get, you know, the rigid structure with all the negative and positive aspects of that. Fine by me, we leave the girls and we go back to the guys, because the guys are obviously the more interesting people, even though the girls are in power, as we learn. The women are in power all the time, as we learn. Well, all the time. We're going to talk about that in a bit. We go back to, yeah, those guys. They go to Cairhien, is that the name of the city, where Celine, who is definitely not just Celine, and I always claim she's Lanfear, but I don't know, so we'll see, is leading our good buddy Rand, and Loyal and Euron. I always want to say Urine, but that's not his name. Is it Huron? Something like that. The Sniffer. No, no wonder he's always sniffing. His name is Urine. Anyway, they go there, and we come to all kinds of problems. And the big one here is, once again, the sledgehammer world building and sledgehammer style of Robert Jordan. Because yes, this is a decadent city. It's a noble city full of nobles that all play the game of houses. Which, yeah, I would really like to know if there's a source for my suspicion that George R. R. Martin named his Game of Thrones after the Game of Houses, because I know that he's something of a Wheel of Time fan, so maybe there's some inspiration there. Maybe he's paying homage to it. I don't know. Anyway, so all these noblemen in Cairhien are playing the Game of Houses, which has even a fancy fantasy language name. And all they're doing is intriguing the living shit out of each other, for whatever reason. And that's sort of the idea, the problem that I have there is like, that's not a believable society. Not at fucking all. That's like, no, that's not how that works, Bobby J. You can't make that a believable culture, a believable society. Have a city full of arrogant lords trying to backstab each other through intrigue. That was never the fucking case in fucking world history. It's not sustainable at fucking all. And it annoys the living shit out of me. To be fair, Rand has the correct idea. Burning all the paperwork is exactly what I would do if I could. I mean, he's got all my sympathy there. Best thing to do generally. So yeah, we're cool with that. Apart from that, the whole like intrigue thing just feels super unrealistic, too blunt, too on the nose, and there's never any reason given apart from like, well, probably they're just dickheads and love to do that. And that's it. That's not how that works. So there we are. That whole like game thing just didn't work for me at all. Because once again, having power plays and the idea of power and whatnot, yes, but there's no explanation like why those people are in power, why they are privileged. Do they own land? Do they get their money from that? Do they have like, armed lot of armed forces so they can enforce their will? It's like, what is stopping all those poor people outside the walls in like Foregate or whatever it's called, Foreskin? What's stopping them from fucking burning down the entire city and leveling the thing? We don't get any information whatsoever. Plus, everyone inside that city is an arrogant, scheming bastard for some reason. Like, why? Why? Doesn't work like that. Pisses me off. However, Rand goes out into also, everyone in the city is obviously false and lying all the time, which is made clear with all their unctuous voices and their unctuous, oily appearances. And yeah, like everyone in that city is an arsehole, basically. But everyone outside is kind of cool, except for the people that are dark friends. Plus, we meet Tom Marilyn again, because yes, he's alive, and Rand meets him, and we come to like another thing that I don't like in a bit. Well, he goes and meets, him and Loyal go out to talk to Tom Marilyn, and that's really cool. And Tom is like, yeah, I'm done with you guys. If you're no longer hanging out with Moraine Sedai, you're probably safe, or you're definitely not the Dragon Reborn, because apparently you're not the guy I thought you are, because you're too dumb to tell me that you're channeling. So yeah, go fuck yourself. I'm going to get married because I'm a smart person. Which, yeah, good on ya, Tommy boy. Obviously, that's not what will end up happening at the end of the day, but yeah, we kind of guessed that, didn't we? Anyway, on the way back, suddenly, out of nowhere, Selene shows up because they are threatened by Trollocs. And puppet people playing with puppets that look like Trollocs, and suddenly those are real Trollocs. And I'm like, I'm not sure if that would work. But maybe if I stretch my disbelief even further, all the way out there, until it could almost reach to the next end of the world, maybe it would work. No, it doesn't. I mean, come on. You cannot do that. Like, it makes clear that all those fucking Trolloc puppets that he sees before look fucking unrealistic. And then a full-on Trolloc walks in and is apparently smart enough and controlled enough to actually play along with it. Now, well, I mean, it's a conceit, it doesn't have to be realistic, but it happens. And then there's a bit of a fight, and they flee, and, well, we'll talk about that now. So, well, they're fleeing along the compound of the Illuminators, which, sadly enough, are not a secret society around a pyramid with an eye on it, but, we can all dream. The Illuminators are the Firework Guild. There's two things here that I find interesting. One of them is, would any fantasy book feature fireworks as an important theme if it weren't for J.R.R. Tolkien's love for fireworks, which he immortalized both in The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings? I doubt it. But anyway, we have a guild of fireworks people that do like to blow stuff up, and I can understand that. That's cool. And they're running along their compound. They're obviously super secretive and a bit like more evil than just like one bearded old wizard that does his own like fireworks stuff. But, there we are. And while they're running along their compound and cannot actually enter, suddenly out of nowhere, bam! Celine shows up. It's like, oh, you gotta be a great man, Rand. Great men do this. And great. Suddenly, Rand starts thinking with his dick, which we are not supposed to mention because no one ever talked about genitals in this book. So he starts thinking with the hair on his chest, which I doubt he has if he's just 16 years old. But that's sort of what happens. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, there's a door in the wall to their compound. And I'm not quite sure if there actually are a lot of like weird gates in that wall that no one knows, secret doors, or if are totally not Aes Sedai, Selene, Lanfear, whatever is magicking the door in there. I suspect the latter, but I'm not quite sure. Also, have you noticed that like every time Selene shows up, there's this spicy smell in the air? Is she perhaps a soul taken or divers? I'm wondering, maybe she's a shape changer, escaped from a different, much more interesting intellectual property. We'll never know. Anyway, we get a bit of like firework hijinks, which is mostly, doesn't actually, fulfill any purpose apart from giving us a bit of like slapstick and having another scene where a woman is cussing out a man, and that's about it. Rand fires big firework rockets at Trollocs, and then they all flee again. Well, there we are. And Selene vanishes again. However, well, it's always called the Chapter House, and I would love to have like the Chapter House of the Illuminators be called Chapter House Boom, but apparently that's not an option. It could also be, Mount Boom, because apparently there's a bit of a hillock in there. But Robert Jordan is missing those chances of actually making jokes, unfortunately. But well, there we are. They go back into town, and when they actually enter, the inn is on fire, and and the horn has been robbed, but Rand is still saving his man Euron, and obviously also the dragon banner, because that makes a lot of sense, Rand. He does that, and when he comes out, just at this point, the rest of the gang, Perrin, Matt, and the Aes Sedai, and Madrin is her name. She's cool. She's nerdy. She's a bit like the funny nerd character, but we all need one of those, so I'm fine with her being that. Anyway, they all show up, and everyone is happy apart from the fact that the horn and the dagger has been lost again. So, well, there's that. Much more to say about that? Not really, actually. I mean, there's a lot of action going on. I'm fine with a lot of action going on, but it just feels a bit like convenience kind of thing, because either it's supposed to be a long con, and Selene was distracting Rand and Loyal from the inn so the other guys could burn the place down. Possible, but maybe not very believable. Anyway, then they all have their big plan to go to the evil Duke's house, whose name I've already forgotten, because who cares? He's dead now. Which luckily Rand got his invitation through his dumb fucked up game of houses, where he was just like burning paperwork, except the one from the king and the Archduke, or whatever his name is. Well, yeah. So, what should we look at? The Fremen show up. I mean, I've said it before that there's like obviously a lot of like Dune influences here, with the Aes Sedai being a bit of like a Bene Gesserit ripoff, and the Aiel men are the Fremen. Of course they are. So when the first one shows up, he's all about like sharing his water of life and stuff with the Aes Sedai. But I want to mention this because I found this really cool. They talk about that they have left their country because they're looking for their Muad'Dib. He has a different name, but I forgot it. Anyway, they're looking for their white savior, which is apparently one of them, and doesn't really know it because he's born somewhere outside, and Anyway, and he does, and I love that Aielman they're talking to. He just like, and under this sign he will conquer. In hoc signo vinces, and he draws the Aes Sedai yin-yang symbol on the ground. And that is pretty funny and kind of, makes that whole, like, idea of all kinds of different religions being like mangled through these like reiterations of history, kind of cool. So yeah, I mean, that was funny and well done. So once again, kudos, Bobby J. That was actually good. See, from time to time, he manages to actually pull something off that is not absolutely horrible. So there we go. And then we have the whole like party at Rich Lord, what's his name's place, where the horn was taken, and yeah, obviously it was taken through another waygate, and yeah. Look, the party is also a bit over the top because once again, Robert Jordan can't do subtle. He can't. He has to use the fucking sledgehammer of prose. And yes, all those ladies try to get like into Rand's pants, which are probably empty because once again, this is Wheel of Time and dicks have no place in there. And it comes across as so crude and I don't know. I've known some fairly strong-minded, forward women in my time, but no one behaves like that. It feels like a fucking caricature, like a cliche stacked upon a cliche upon a cliche, and he does that all the time. And it feels unironic, and that's the problem for me. Anyway, Tom Maryland is obviously also there, and because yes, we know that Tom is bound to the others, so he'll use any narrative device that he can come up with to drag those poor fuckers back, that poor fucker back in. Justified? I don't think so. However, what I wanted to say is they go back, they decide they need to use the ways as well because they can't use the ways in this place, but they could go to an Ogier Steading. Which is exactly what they plan to do. And while they are doing that, good buddy Tom Maryland comes home to find his wife-to-be murdered because why not? And thus, he decides to join back into the game and do stuff. And I'm pissed off by this, like, device. Like, really? Does it always have to be? I mean, at least this time it was the wife and not, they didn't kill the dog and made it personal. They killed his lover, but still, it feels like cheap. It feels like a cheap cop-out, and I'm not happy with it. Anyway, not exactly what I wanted to go through today. In detail, I just want to point out that I think it's lazy storytelling to just have the bad guys randomly kill people that are close to our heroes or one of our characters to make him go and do something. It just doesn't work, especially in a world that is so much relying on the idea of fate and stuff like that, right? If we had a world that is full of random events that don't make any sense, then yeah, sure, I can live with the fact that maybe someone's standing in the wrong place. In this world, no one is standing in the wrong place unless they are meant to stand in the wrong place. And that is like lazy, cruel storytelling. I don't like that. So yeah, Tom's back on the prowl, I guess. And the city of Cairien is burning because, I don't know. Yes, someone apparently also murdered the evil Archduke, what's his name? And then the city is burning because I don't even ask at this point, I don't even care anymore. So let's look at the two really interesting things that I haven't talked about yet. One of them is the Shanchan, which is a new culture, and they ride on Grom, which are really cool, like monsters. And they ride on, sometimes they also ride on these cats that are dinosaur cats. So yeah, that's really cool. I like that. And they come back from wherever, from across the sea, and they're supposed to be Arthur Hawkwind's descendants that he sent over there, and they're coming back and are attacking everyone because everyone has forgotten to worship good old Arthur. That's a cool plot. I just find their depiction incredibly cheap. And see, this is one of those problems that I have with this book. I was always told Wheel of Time has this great deep lore and all the cultures are so wonderfully detailed. This is not detailed cultures. This is cheap as fuck. I mean, this is... Yeah, they have a kind of slurred accent because they're still speaking the same language after like 1,000 years or whatever. Sure, that makes a lot of sense. and it it just never really adds up. He just doesn't give us like actual cultures. What he does, what Robert Jordan does, is he gives us pretty paintings. Like they have like detailed clothes and styles and hairstyles and stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. But you don't explain why it is that way. That's what makes a culture a culture. It's like if you give us some hint of why everything is running in a specific way. We don't get that. Maybe we'll get it in future books if I have the patience to continue, which I have no idea if I will. So yeah, we'll talk more about the Shanshan at some point, but apparently they're just going there and taking every woman that has a bit of talent and making her a slave with a collar. And the slave people, I mean the slavers, all have cool lightning on their uniforms, so we know they're evil. Yeah. And that's sort of where we're going with this. And obviously, at the end of the day, Padan Fane, who is still the evil guy, the bad guy, takes the box with the horn and the dagger to their governor, I guess, of the Songchan, because we already learned that at Toman Head, is that the place? Toman Head is where the next part of the prophecy of the Dragon Reborn has to happen. So Rand is coming there. And the Horn is going to be there. And who else is going to be there? We'll find out tomorrow. Because yes, I know already. I've read the chapter, but I'm not going to say today. But that's sort of where we are. Anyway, the gang goes to one of the steadings. We get a bit of like fun poked at poor bastard Loyal because he's young, and then we learn that obviously gender roles are just the same among the Ogier as they are within all human society, apart from the spear maidens of the Aiel. That's it. Apart from that, and even there, like, you know, you have an entirely different species, and you still make them conform to the same like gender roles and expectations. Is that necessary? Really necessary? It's like, yes, you know, every man is apparently very much under control of the women. So it's always the women that decide everything and the men are just following. It doesn't matter if they're human or Ogier, probably even Trolloc, and possibly even Grom. I expect it at this point. That the Grom mother takes her Grom boy and marries him off to a Grom girl once she and that grown girl's mother have decided that that will be how it will go. Possibly. I'm almost sure. Please don't tell me that will actually happen. That will very much make me break down and cry. However, let's look at something that is actually pretty fun and cool at the end to end this on a high note. I already said that I wanted to end here because of something of a symmetry, and that is when they find out that they can't use the ways there as well because the weird black wind is blocking the place at every single entrance to the ways. So the ways, Wheel of Time subway is closed. So they're going to use I guess, monorail or whatever it is, the teleporter, the waystone thing. Because yes, that's probably possible. And Rand has to channel power to do that. And we get this great, well, not great, but cool scene where everyone there also has to go through all these different possible versions of themselves, all these different possible worlds where they made other choices and end up dying or doing wrong things, and seeing all those possible, futures of their possible versions of their lives. Which sort of mirrors the thing that happens with Nynaeve when she goes through the ghost of wisdom, present, past, and future kind of thing when she becomes an Aes Sedai. So that's sort of what I like about it, and this is definitely something that I hope that we'll get more of that in the future, to look at these like different possibilities, these parallel universes or whatever. That's something that I personally think gives it something of a unique vibe, and I'm very much hoping that we'll get more of that in the future. So far, that's probably the best thing that has happened in this entire book so far for me, is that we have these ideas of parallel universes and stuff. That adds something that is unique, and I like it so far. Alright, let's wrap this up. What do we get? Shitty cultures, not so cool magic school, really cool parallel universe and different possibilities kind of thing. And everyone is going to that place where the next part of the prophecy will happen, at Tomund Head, where all of this stuff will come together. Yes, I missed some stuff, but I already rambled far too long for today. I'll try to pack the rest in tomorrow's video, and then I'll probably need a day to, like the rest of the week off before I get into The Dragon Reborn on Monday. Anyway, that's sort of the plan. Have a great Wednesday. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Cheers.